It was the early morning of October 12th, 2024. I was at the Deep Horizon Research Station, located in the Wilkes Land crater in the heart of East Antarctica. The thermometer outside read minus 62 degrees. Inside the geophysics module, the silence was broken only by the hum of the heaters and the rhythmic beeping of the seismographs. I was the night operator, responsible for monitoring ice stability. My job was to ensure the drilling platform wasn't swallowed by a sudden crevasse. At 4:14 a.m., the ground shook. It wasn't a common tremor, like those short, violent ones caused by tectonic plate shifts. It was a long, rolling, nauseating motion, as if we were on a boat at sea, not on top of 3 kilometers of solid ice. I looked at the monitors. The seismograph registered a magnitude 4 on the Richter scale. But the epicenter wasn't miles away. The epicenter was directly beneath us, exactly 3,200 meters down. What made me freeze wasn't the shaking. It was what happened on the secondary screen, an isolated monitor I had express orders never to turn off, though I never understood why it was there. That screen didn't show ice data or polar weather. It displayed a real-time hydrological graph of a river 12,000 kilometers away, the Euphrates River in Iraq. The exact second the ground beneath me shook, the river graph hit the bottom red line, absolute zero level, total drought in a specific stretch of the ancient riverbed. I tried to tell myself it was a coincidence. Tectonic plates shift, rivers dry up, unconnected events happen at the same time. But then came the second tremor, exactly 60 seconds after the first, and then the third, rhythmically. It wasn't geology, it was biology. Something massive, buried beneath the world's oldest ice, had just reacted to the disappearance of the water in the desert. And judging by the force of the impact coming from below, it wasn't just moving, it was waking up. My name can't be in any official record, but my badge said I was a senior geophysicist for Kronos Deep Core Mining. Kronos is one of those companies that exists only on paper, subcontracted by governments to do the dirty work far from the public eye. We were sent to Wilkes Land under the guise of prospecting for rare earth deposits. But any rookie geologist would know that you don't set up an operation of that size in that specific location just for minerals. The Wilkes Land gravity anomaly has been known since the 70s. There is a huge mass down there, something dense and metallic that distorts Earth's magnetic field. My routine was monotonous, 12 hours staring at ground-penetrating sonar charts. The sonar gave us a blurry image of what lay beneath the ice. It looked like a city or a massive circular structure, kilometers in diameter. We called it the dome. We never drilled all the way down to it. The order was to drill only to the transition layer and install sensors, listening devices, high-fidelity microphones, and thermal sensors. I thought we were monitoring a lost secret military base, maybe something from the Nazis or the Cold War. I never questioned why we had a satellite data feed dedicated to monitoring water levels of biblical rivers in the Middle East. The station chief, a man named Becker, claimed it was for global tide calibration, a stupid lie, but when you're paid triple the market rate to stay quiet on the ice, you accept stupid lies. That October night, I was alone in the module. Becker was asleep. The drill team was stood down due to a storm. I was the only one to see the synchronicity. The river dried up. The thing hit. The correlation was too perfect to be natural. It was as if the river were a weight on a scale, and now that the weight was gone, the other side was rising. I tried to rationalize it. I checked the sensor cables. I checked the satellite connection. Everything was green. The Euphrates signal came from a UN measurement buoy, public data. The seismic signal came from our buried geophones. There was no technical error. The break in my reality happened when the interval between the tremors changed. It started with a pulse every 60 seconds. At 0430, the interval dropped to 50 seconds. At 045, 40 seconds. The frequency was increasing. Whatever was down there wasn't just moving, it was gaining rhythm. It felt like a heart emerging from deep hibernation, pumping faster and faster. I picked up the internal phone to call Becker's quarters. Before I could dial, my station's audio system, which was on mute, activated on its own. A low noise, infrasound, filled the room. My teeth vibrated, my eyes watered. It wasn't the mechanical sound of machinery, it was an organic sound, a groan coming from 3 kilometers deep that sounded like wails, but distorted, metallic, and furious. I looked at the Euphrates chart again. An automated text message appeared on the screen, coming from the company's central server in Europe. It read simply, CO4 breached. Initiate acoustic suppression protocol. They knew. They were waiting for this. To them, the drying of the river wasn't a climate catastrophe. It was a clock, and the alarm had just gone off.
Becker entered the module 2 minutes later, wearing only his thermal underwear and boots, his hair disheveled. He didn't ask me what was happening. He went straight to the comms panel and yanked the master internet cable. The Euphrates screen went black. The outside world vanished. We were isolated. I asked him what that was. I asked why the floor was jumping. He turned to me with a look that mixed terror with a trained sense of calm. He said it was an ice cave collapse and that compressed gases were escaping, causing the sound. It was the worst lie I had ever heard. Ice caves don't have a heartbeat. Gases don't wait for a river to dry up to escape. He ordered me to delete the records from the last 2 hours. He said it was an equipment glitch, and he didn't want to stain the monthly report with dirty data. His behavior changed completely. He locked the module door from the inside. No one in, no one out. The institutional silence set in. The other scientists started waking up from the tremors, banging on the metal door, asking if we should evacuate. Becker ignored them. He was focused on a single screen, the thermal reading of the borehole. The temperature down there was rising. I felt the air grow heavy. It wasn't just atmospheric pressure. It was the sensation of sitting on the lid of a pressure cooker about to explode, and watching the cook try to hold the lid down with his bare hands instead of turning off the heat.
I pretended to comply. I started typing the deletion commands, but in reality, I was copying the files onto a portable physical drive I used for music. The backup process was slow, and I was breaking out in a cold sweat as the progress bar crept forward. Meanwhile, taking advantage of Becker being distracted on an encrypted satellite phone, I opened the local system's dead files folder. They were old documents left behind by previous teams. I found a geological report from 1998, scanned and mislabeled as historical curiosities. The title was Global Hydraulic Lock Theory. The text was technical, but the conclusion was terrifying. The author speculated that certain geological masses on Earth were connected by a spiritual or quantum pressure. He claimed that the flow of ancient waters, like the Nile and the Euphrates, acted as a frequency barrier. As long as the water flowed, the Earth's vibration kept certain cells locked.
It was madness. It sounded like cheap esotericism, but the data in front of me confirmed it. The water stopped. The cell opened. I cross-referenced this information with the sound I had recorded. I applied a simple audio cleanup filter. The groan, once cleared of the rock static, wasn't just a sound. It had patterns. It had syntax. The thing was trying to communicate. Or maybe it was just screaming in hunger after 12,000 years. The grave discovery wasn't just that the monster existed. It was realizing that the drying up of the Euphrates might not have been natural. I saw work orders from our parent company financing massive dams in Turkey and agricultural water diversions. They didn't wait for the river to dry up. They helped dry the river. They wanted to open the cell.
The floor lurched violently, knocking monitors off the desks. The temperature in the borehole shot up to 40 degrees above zero. The ice around the rig was melting. We were sinking. The fire alarm went off, not because of smoke, but because of the sheer heat rising from below. Becker yelled for the armed security team. They burst in wearing helmets and carrying rifles, but they didn't point them at the door to protect us. They pointed them at us, the scientists. "No one leaves until containment is reestablished," Becker screamed. The danger was immediate. They would rather let us sink with the station than let us get out and tell the world what we saw.
I knew I had to get out of there. The sound from below had changed. The heartbeat had stabilized into a strong, slow rhythm, the pulse of something that had already woken up and was rising. The ice beneath the station began to crack, sounding like cannon fire. The module's metal framework groaned and twisted. I used the panic of another massive tremor to slip out of the main module and run for the snowcat garage. I wasn't the only one. 2 mechanics were there, trying to start a tractor. The fear in their eyes mirrored my own. It wasn't a fear of dying. It was a fear of being consumed. Before I ran, I took one last look at the telemetry monitor that had been left on in the garage, looping the signal from the main probe. The deep thermal camera, which should have been staring into total darkness, showed something. The mass of heat down there had separated. It was no longer a uniform red smear. It was 2 oval points, glowing, incandescent, separated by about 30 meters of darkness. They were eyes, gigantic thermal eyes, looking up, looking at the probe, looking at us. And then a claw or a tentacle or something the camera's resolution couldn't define swept in front of the lens, and the image cut to static. The partial revelation hit me like a punch in the gut. They weren't mining. They were watching the jailer. And now, the jailer had woken up. The thing knew the river seal had broken. The connection between the desert and the ice was real. The Euphrates was the lock, and humanity, in its ignorance or greed, had just turned the key. The height of the terror wasn't seeing the monster emerge. It was knowing it was still 3 kilometers down, but rising fast. The ice, which had seemed eternal and solid, now felt like paper. I made it out in a snowcat with the mechanics. We drove for 6 hours through a whiteout until we reached the Australian coastal base. We lied. We said there was a generator fire. No one asked too many questions because Deep Horizon declared a catastrophic structural failure, and the area was cordoned off as a geological hazard zone. I'm hiding out in South America now. I watch the news every day. They talk about the war in the Middle East. They talk about the water crisis. But no one talks about the unexplained earthquakes in Antarctica that started last week. They say it's global warming cracking the glaciers. I know it's not. The ice isn't melting because of the sun. It's melting because of its body heat. It is rising. The Euphrates remains dry. The seal remains open. And the thing remains awake. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, thinking the ground is shaking to the same rhythm as that morning, a slow, heavy, hungry heartbeat. I don't know how much time we have until it breaches the surface. Maybe months, maybe years, but it knows we're here. If you've made it to the end of this report, I need you to do your part. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell Share this, and tell me in the comments, have you noticed any strange weather changes or tremors where you live recently? I want to map out if it's already affecting other places. Stay vigilant. The river is dry, and the ice won't hold forever.